Cozy games are, for many people, the perfect games for a cold fall or winter day. A day you want to just stay inside and relax with a warm cup of coffee. Unfortunately, not everyone gets to live in a place where the weather agrees with our cozy desires year-round. Some of us have to deal with a good 6 months or so of heat. So before those days inevitably come for us, let's take a look at some of those cozy games that are perfect to play on a cold, perhaps rainy day inside. Hello and welcome to the channel if you're new here. I'm Nick and I make videos about things I'm interested in. In today's video, that means that we're going to be focusing on those aforementioned cozy, chilly day video games. So without any further delay, let's check out the games, shall we? We're going to start out hot with the witchy vibes. Reka is an absolutely beautiful game about the Baba Yaga of Slavic folklore. You play as the titular Reka. You're exploring this strange world, and under the watchful eye of the Baba Yaga, you learn the ways of the spirits of that world and how to be the next Baba Yaga. See, in this world, a Baba Yaga has all but lost her powers entirely, and you are being trained to take her place. The game is a really beautiful examination of tradition, cultural evolution, and the place of magic and superstition in a modernizing world. Aside from the story though, the vibes are absolutely impeccable. The world you're exploring is this absolutely gorgeous representation of the Nordic woodlands. And the whole thing takes place on the cusp of winter, which gives it this really evocative, sleepy woodland vibe. I can't get enough of the world of Reka. It's absolutely dripping with vibes, and while the magic system is a bit on the basic side, I don't care, because simply walking around the world is just exactly the fall vibes I want from a cozy game. I've covered a lot of cozy games at this point, but this has got to be one of the best at nailing that winter/fall feel. You can almost feel the cold breeze biting at your cheeks and smell the forest as you interact with all the little forest spirits and try to balance the desires of the townspeople you meet with the respect those spirits deserve. It's an absolutely beautiful game in every meaning of the word, and if you're in the mood for some witchy vibes and a beautiful world to explore, I can't think of a better game to recommend to you. But if you're more in the high fantasy mood and still want some of those oh-so-cozy vibes, let me introduce you to our next game.
Villager portraits are hot, very hot. Fields of Mistria. Look.
Mistria. We're sticking with it. Fields of Mistria. Okay, I think that's the first time I've said that right in my entire life. Fields of Mistria is basically if you took Stardew and made it a kind of fantasy x anime collab. It's perfect for anyone who really loves the idea of Stardew, but can't stand all the intricate systems which feel like they're just there to get in your way. I personally generally do fall into that category, if I'm being totally honest. I think there is so much fun to be had in Stardew, and I mean, there is a very good reason that it's so surpassingly popular. However, I do think that for a lot of people, like myself, it's just a bit too rigid in its philosophy. To be clear, I don't think that the way that Stardew decides to do things is by any means wrong. It's just not for me personally, and that's what's so great about having the options like Fields of Mistria. It's everything we love about Stardew with the time management stress stripped away just a little bit. Plus, really hot character profiles, which is, you know, a plus. Sexy people aside though, it's a really great evolution of Stardew. The art style is just a bit more modern feeling. It has this beautiful pastel color palette, and everything just feels really clean. Again, I feel the need to reiterate that none of this is by any means meant to slander the good name of Stardew. I love the pixel art in that too, I just really appreciate the different direction that Mistria decided to go in. They also made it lean a bit more in the direction of Animal Crossing, with things like the ability to jump and swim, which really do add a lot to make you feel less restricted. If I had to sum it up, Fields of Mistria is basically if you took Stardew and did everything you can to make it simpler and more approachable. Basically, if you've tried and bounced off of Stardew, I would highly recommend checking out Fields of Mistria, because I think you just might finally find that foothold that you're looking for there. So now, on to our next game. Minami Lane is an extremely simple, scoped-down city builder. What do I mean by that? Well, instead of building a city, you're building a street, or a lane, if you will. The gameplay has you place all the different shops and decide how to manage them and how they look so that your residents are all effectively satisfied with their little street. I think it's a really interesting take on the city builder, and I think in a lot of ways it's kind of an interesting examination of that genre through a different cultural lens. Here in the US, we tend to think about things like cities in terms of what they can produce and how they can benefit the country as a whole, and just generally more like a business instead of a collection of people working together to get what they all want. Now, is that a very idealized and optimistic idea of what a city should be? Yes, but I also don't think it's entirely crazy to think that that could be possible. And, more relevant to this discussion, that is exactly what Minami Lane explores. I would classify Minami Lane as the kind of criticism and examination that, instead of directly stating its points, instead uses the strengths of video games as a medium to make you understand what they're saying. They show a community, multiple communities in fact, that are working together and having their needs met despite having vastly different needs. And the scope of the whole thing is focused on the street and getting everything you need from that one street. It's a very localized, very communal concept of a city. Now, perhaps I'm reading a bit too much into this little indie game city builder, but I just think it's a really cool thing that even if it wasn't entirely intentional, they can explore topics like that with such a small and simple game. But how is the game? Well, it's a really calming, cozy, just kind of chill experience. The gameplay is by no means complex, and while there are some time limits and goals that you can miss, those are optional and they don't prevent you from playing the game and enjoying the experience regardless. It's a really competent game, and I think they make it exactly as complicated as it needs to be and not a bit more. If you're casually into city builders, or you just think the idea is cool but have always been put off by their complexity, Minami Lane is for you. Also, if you like Japanese culture and enjoy engaging with things that are very much designed to appeal to that aesthetic, you're gonna love it. But if you're looking for something a bit more creative and free-form than Minami Lane affords, then you should stick around for our next game. Honestly, there isn't much left for me to say about Tiny Glade that I haven't already said. But if you haven't seen my videos talking about it, here's the rundown. Tiny Glade is a cozy, chilled-out, procedural castle doodler. Whether you want to make a cute little chateau nestled in the center of a cozy little fall forest, or you want to make a spooky graveyard, Tiny Glade has got you covered. This is by far one of my favorite games to chill out with, and if you've spent so much as 5 minutes in it, you'll know why. Everything about this game is designed around being as cozy, relaxing, and satisfying as humanly possible. I'm honestly kind of tempted to show you just 5 minutes of straight gameplay to convince you, because I genuinely think that might speak louder than any words that I can say. But this game is just one of those incredible experiences that makes me love games and gaming as a whole. It's things like this that get me excited to jump into Steam and try to find the next amazing indie game pushing the boundaries of gaming and game design. And it doesn't stop at the game either. Tiny Glade is a passion project for the two devs behind it. And I know this has zero bearing on the actual game itself, but I just love that they're together. Their Steam updates always make me smile to read, and I just love their vibe in general. And they have been absolutely tearing it up with those Steam updates. Back when I first showcased the game on my channel, it was rather rudimentary. Extremely polished, don't get me wrong, but it still had a ways to go. And they're showing no signs of stopping anytime soon. I honestly had very few things that I wanted them to change when I showcased it here, and they seem to have fixed just about every single complaint I had. If there was ever a time to check out one of my all-time favorite games, it's right now. So what are you waiting for? Go check out Tiny Glade. I promise you won't regret it. So now we'll move on over a little to the left to make room for our next game. A Little to the Left is one of those games that you can just immediately understand the appeal of. It's an organizational puzzle game where you need to solve a given spatial puzzle by channeling your inner Monica and putting everything you're faced with in its correct place. Now, that correct place may vary from person to person, and that is where my main complaint against this game comes in. Everything else is perfect. The art, the music, the sense of humor, it's all exactly what I want from a rainy day game. But I think the degree to which they're able to successfully give you that satisfaction of neatly organizing a desk drawer is both their greatest strength, but also one of their few weaknesses in the game, because if it doesn't land exactly perfect and exactly how you, the player, were expecting it, it kind of throws off the feeling. Now, that is to some degree entirely unavoidable in a puzzle game, but I think it's worth at least mentioning. As many puzzle games will inevitably have, there are some BS puzzles, but on the whole, this game scratches that organizational itch perfectly, better than pretty much any other game I can think of. If you're the kind of person who loves lining up pencils from short to tall or organizing a drawer based on the color or size of objects in it, this game is absolutely for you. But let's not linger too long on this game because I have a really great one you probably haven't heard of yet, and that is Oddada, or Oddada, or Oddada, is a musical creation and exploration game. It lets you learn about music, notes, scales, and all of that without the pressure of not sounding like a seasoned orchestra professional. They slowly introduce different elements and themes for the music that you make, and they make sure not to let you get too bogged down by the minutia of the beats that you're making. To be clear, this is not a music industry software. It's by no means intended to replace or compete with anything like that. It's a game that helps you kind of get your foot in the door with music. Take someone like me, for instance. I'm not into music at all. I have no real desire to make music. I listen to it, but I don't understand it, and I have very little desire to understand it. This game, however, was able to make me, at the very least, have a good time with it, which was something every single one of my music teachers in school was entirely unable to do. Not that that's their fault. They don't have the control over their curriculum that they would need to be able to do that for someone like me. But what I'm saying is that if I had something like this when I was in middle school or something, I may have learned a bit more about music. I don't think I'm the kind of person with the kind of brain to actually do it professionally, but I might be more interested in it if I had something like this when I was that age. It's a beautifully made game with a great segmented approach to teaching and exploration, which never lets you get too caught up in your own head and instead is extremely effective at guiding you through your musical exploration. Almost as effective as our next game is. Alright, I'm sure many of you are already well aware of Celeste, so I won't keep you for too long on this game, but if you're into retro-style platformers which encourage exploration and have just the right amount of story to motivate you, and you haven't already, you're going to want to check out Celeste. Over the course of the game, you are taken along on a young girl's journey of self-acceptance and through her battle with depression and anxiety. It's a really beautiful story, and I think the metaphor of climbing a mountain works really well in combination with the theme of living with depression and fighting against those thoughts. I've not personally dealt with that on the level that Madeline does, but I know lots of people who have, and just based on my experiences with them and how people reacted online to this game, it's a really poignant and representative take on that struggle and everything that comes along with it. You may not want to try it out if you don't think you can handle that kind of thing right now, but even story aside, if you just skip through all the dialogue, it's an absolutely S-tier platformer, and sometimes all we need is a bit of a challenge to overcome, and this is the perfect kind of challenge for that. But I promised I would keep that one short, so now in the interest of not perjuring myself, let's check out our next game. Do you like Ace Attorney, but you are looking for a more retro-coded experience with a bit more focus on the investigative process? Well, it sounds like Paper Perjury is for you. This is a beautiful pixel art detective game made by Papercat Games, and it's positioned to take up the Ace Attorney crown, and based on the comment section from my dedicated video on it, it's hitting all the right marks. Full disclosure, I'm not a detective game guy. I'm just not. I don't love reading, and most games of that genre are full of reading, but Paper Perjury just hit different. Maybe it's because I was given a review copy, so I felt a bit more of an obligation to give it a shot. I don't know, but what I can say is that I had a blast with my time with the game. Even for someone like me, someone who isn't really interested in reading my games, and also isn't the biggest fan of puzzle games in general, this game somehow beat all the odds and really wormed its way into my heart. I think a lot of that is probably thanks to the incredibly likable and believable cast of characters. Everyone felt real, and they didn't have BS reasons for their crimes. Usually, if there was a crime committed, it was either for a good reason, or at the very least, you could understand their reason for doing it. And I think that's something this game does extremely well. They have a very nuanced and fair take on the criminal system. They are positioning cops as the good guys, but they don't miss an opportunity to criticize the systems they're working to improve. I found myself agreeing with a lot of the politics in this game, and I find that refreshing for a game centering around cops and solving crimes. All in all, if you have any interest in Ace Attorney or other detective games or media, but you want to change things up, I highly recommend Paper Perjury. It's a refreshing take on the genre, and it's just a really damn solid game. Much like our next game. Dorfromantik is, as you're seeing right now, kind of like a chill countryside builder. The Steam page calls it a peaceful building strategy and puzzle game, but it's basically a game where you take these hexagonal tiles, which have a certain landscape feature on them, and try to place them to gain points. You can run out of tiles, and if you place the tiles well, you gain tiles, so the goal of the game is to kind of play as long as possible, and also to just have a good time. The gameplay kind of speaks for itself, so just watch that while I talk about what I love so much about this game. For one, it's a video gamification of a tabletop board game. I find that such a cool thing. Maybe it's more common than I assume, but I think it's just so cool that they had this game, made it in the physical world, and then people just loved it so much they decided to take it to a whole nother level and bring it to the virtual space so you can really see all those cool, cozy little things happening on the landscape that you're building. The graphical style is amazing. The audio is great. I just loved every second of playing this game. It's such a fun time sink, and they have all these great little features like free build mode and photo mode, and you can customize the experience to fit your playstyle. It's just the perfect game to play on a cold, rainy, or windy day, and if you're the kind of person who gets a kick out of miniatures and little countryside maquettes, this is going to be such a fun game for you. Plus, they gamify it just enough, in my opinion, to keep you coming back, and not so much to get you caught up in the optimization of it all. It's a cozy game through and through, and I can't recommend it higher. But if you're into building up a countryside, you might be interested in our last title. Now, Manor Lords is another title you've probably heard of already. It's gotten a lot of press, and the people who play it really love it, and I can totally understand why. It breaks from the more traditional cozy game ethos of pastel colors, cute little chibi characters, and more chilled out vibe, but I think for a certain type of gamer, this is absolutely a game that can suck you in on those days you just kind of need something to pull you in and give you a hug. Now, for the sake of transparency, this game is by no means marketed as a cozy game. I don't actually know how the developer would feel about me calling it a cozy game, but it's kind of cozy to me. It's a city builder through and through. It's not like the other titles on this list. Your people can absolutely die, and the world you're in is completely harsh and totally out to get you. It's the kind of game where you need to stay on top of all your resources and make sure you're managing your people well, otherwise you really won't be getting far. However, I think you'll know if this game falls under your personal definition of cozy. Some of us want the warm embrace of a more typical cozy game like A Little to the Left, and some of us want our cozy games to punch us in the face, and I absolutely fall on both sides of that from time to time. I found this game really appealing. To be clear, I'm very bad at it, but I loved playing it regardless of being bad, just because it felt so good building up this little medieval town. The mechanics of placing houses and painting down roads and building crop fields are just so great, and while I'm sure my little townspeople probably hate me as their lord, I gotta say I have had a really great time whenever I boot this game up. Is it the most traditional pick for a cozy game? No, but I mean, come on, I made a whole video talking about how Elden Ring was a cozy game, so what do you expect? My definition of cozy is extremely wide, and this game absolutely falls within it. And if you're the type of cozy gamer that enjoys this kind of game, I think Manor Lords should absolutely be at the top of your list of games to try out. I really don't think you'll be disappointed. But that's just about all we have time for today. I hope you found 1 or 2 games that you want to try out, and if you did, go ahead and let me know. I always love to hear from you. If you would like to get more direct access to me, you can join our Discord or you can join the channel, whatever works for you. Regardless though, just make sure you like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss a video. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, happy gaming.